That's very weird because I never had this type of setup and it's very difficult. So, Florent, I don't know how you made it. So let's start. Well, of course, you know this answer. The culture can be playful. But first, let me ask you a question. Actually, a few questions. Would you climb a mountain in slippers? Or would you swim in the summer with a coat on? Or even would you jump out of a plane with a backpack? Well, of course, all those images have been taken from ChatGPT. I've created it because I couldn't find them on Google. And I do apologize, and I'm sure, and I hope actually that all the other slides will be better. But just as each context needs the right clothing, so each cultural heritage needs the right game format. And why am I saying so? Sorry. This is not the right presentation. I'm having nightmares now. Okay, never mind. I'm gonna sit here and watch the screen over there and moving this a little bit like this so I can read. Okay. So why am I saying so? It's because the majority of applied games, the majority of cultural institutions, they use video games just like a quick fix. We have a problem, let's use a video game so we can improve, we don't know what. Improve something. Games are cool, games are fashionable, but this is not the right way to do so. So can cultural heritage be playful? The answer is yes, but there is a big but. I'm really sorry because this is not the right presentation and I'm not sure what is going to go after. But when we think about games, we have two clusters in mind. We have digital games and we have analog games. Most of the digital games are video games, and most of the analog games are board games. But what we also have in mind is that those games most of the time offers entertainment without really thinking about their cultural impact. They mostly are enjoyed in a domestic environment, and they are designed with a commercial scope. And this is, for me, the most critical aspect about social impact games. The fact that the majority of the scopes of games is commercial. So, cultural heritage requires a very unique approach, which is based on social impact, and it's a case-by-case approach. So when we think about social impact, we need to think about games that focus on creating an impactful cultural experience, which should be experienced to best enhance first the heritage, not the audience. We need to think about the heritage first, and then we need to think about who needs to benefit from all the strategies that we are making to make the games. And most important aspect is that when we design a game with a cultural impact and social impact aspect, we could have a specific scope in mind that could be commercial, but we need to start thinking that can also be non-commercial. Just like we have art exhibitions that are free and we can enter in a museum and enjoy the experience, we should start to think about that there could be experiences that could be free, which doesn't mean that who makes the game doesn't get money. So the first things that we have to think about is that without a clear purpose, creating a social impact game is very challenging. And this is me, and this is my partner. Matteo is the game director of We Are Muesli. We Are Muesli is an unconventional game studio. We say so because, first of all, we are a social enterprise, which means that we are a non-profit industry. Sorry, not industry, non-profit business. And we are born in this kind of assessment because our scope is to make games with a social impact. Since 2013, we have been creating games for cultural heritage through digital, analog, and hybrid experiences. And we talk about stories, places, art, memories. This is going too fast. We hope to promote actually, positive thinking, inclusive and conscious gaming. And we do it in diverse things, like we do workshop, we teach, we make games, and we also curate events. We also lately, we started to localize games because it is important to preserve the author intent and also the culture experience that you want to localize the language to. So going back to that distinction between digital games and analog games, we have a different one. We never start designing with the game format in mind. We think about that there is a connection between digital and analog, and there are a lot of hybrid experiences in between the two. So the design process should begin with defining the scope and not choosing a game format. And that's why I get very angry with our clients and partners when they call us and they say, we want to make a video game about this castle here in this location. And you're like, are you really sure that the video game is the best way to enhance your heritage? Maybe we need to discuss first what is the best way to do so. So when you have a specific scope, and for specific scope, I mean different types of things, like from tourism. Sorry, I cannot read because of my glasses. I'm really sorry. Tourism development, emotional impact, social inclusions are just some of the scope you should start with when you make a game. Once you have the specific scope for the heritage, you think about your intended audience. And again, when there is a client, or when the majority of studios that approach to applied games, they think that, oh, let's make a cool game about this. They think that the intended audience are gamers. And sorry, this is not the right. I feel a little bit disorientated because this is not my last keynote. But anyway, they think that the target audience is just like the gamer. They don't think about people like cultural enthusiasts or people that students that want to focus on one specific area, like historians or librarians. So the intended audience is another specific key aspect to understand what is the game format you should work with to enhance a cultural heritage. I'm not here to tell you what a game format is. It's a very long list of things. But I'm here to tell you what are the 4 game formats that we use at We Are Muesli. We make video games, we make escape rooms, and pervasive games, and analog games. But instead of moving towards what is analog and what is digital, when we get a brief, when we get someone to work with to valorize, to give value to a heritage, we create a brief according to 2 different axes. What is size specific and what is pocket size? For site specific, we think about a game experience where the audience goes towards the actual heritage to the site. For pocket size, the other way around. The actual heritage goes to the audience. This is very important. It's a very important approach to start with, because otherwise you're just like you are designing in a nutshell. You're not taking into consideration how you could throw your cards to design in a better, more specific way. Within the spectrum, you have a variety of experiences. You could have a card deck that is based on an iPad. You could have an escape room that is digital. And you could have literally so many different kind of outcome. So once the scope is clearly defined, the game format can be tailored to be digital, analog, or a combination of the two. I'm just digging through some case studies of video games and analog games that we made through the years. Cave Deus Videt was our first video game. It's an R5 visual novel based on the work of Hieronymus Bosch. And the brief was pretty simple. It was a brief to promote the works of Dutch painter. It was in anticipation of a big retrospective organized by his foundation in his hometown. So what was the scope? Was an audience development scope, tourism development scope, and educational impact purpose. According to this, we decided that a video game was the right choice, and we made a visual novel to accompany all the initiatives in the hometown of Hieronymus Bosch. We picked a specific painting. We studied it very deeply. And then we decided to go with an art style that is not conflicting with the work of the painter, but it's intriguing, still like something different from what the painter did. Also because competing with Bosch, it's absolutely pointless. The result was a very engaging video game. Sorry, there was a slide here recapping what was the result. And the result was that the game was literally performed in many different places and engaging. It had so much reach back then. And it was just a very simple visual novel. Another example of a video game is 20 mesi, 20 months. This is a completely different topic, but still has a social impact value. A collection of playable stories about Italian Renaissance. I'm pretty scared with the new Italian government. Maybe they're going to take this down, but I'm not sure. 20 months was a brief, a game, a piece of experience that was born to celebrate the 17th anniversary of Italian Renaissance after the liberation from Nazi fascism. Oh, sorry, resistance. My eyes, sorry about this. I said resistance instead of, well, anyway. What was the actual purpose? Was, of course, an intergenerational connection between the new history and the old history. A memory revitalization, and also provide to a younger audience emotional impact. We made this visual novel, which is narrative-based, thinking about, it's called 20 months because the resistance in Italy lasts 20 months. And already immediately with the title, you can have a bit of information. But what we decided to do, it was like a research within those people, those elderly people that still survived. We had a lot of conversation. Every story, all the 20 stories come from real stories of people that told us things about the resistance. But another thing that we did with our direction, the creative direction, was making a game that was in full color, because in the mind of the people, Second World War is in grayscale. This is because we have a lot of footage. And when we see games about war, about Second World War, they are kind of vintage style. And we wanted to give a very sharp, modern, like Enrico Bai look, because we wanted people to have this brightness of the content. A totally different approach is CHU1. It's a local co-op video game, a game experience designed to highlight the social significance of Chinese CIVIS, which are those, yes, these ones, which are those houses, traditional Chinese houses, with where in process of being gentrified. Is that, do you all understand? Gentrified in Beijing. We were asked to provide cultural awareness, cultural preservation, and social inclusion. And of course, we are not Chinese, and we couldn't do that without putting ourselves, without putting our history in it. We tried our best. But what we did, we actually went to Beijing and stayed there for a little while and saw those places and started to make a game that was non-verbal, so that everybody could play around the table, and that was helping people to get the social value of those houses by collaborating around this kind of grid that you see on the screen. The experience went really well, and then I show you what was the secondary scope. I give you another example, which is Ghost and Found, and again, another totally different experience, designed to uncover the hidden history of a little village, above all, the abbey of this village, that is still having problems and issues about isolation, depopulation. This is the abbey, and it's an incredible abbey in Italy. It's like the Da Vinci Code kind of abbey that you enter and you see all the most strange things. So we went there and we understood that the only way to help people to understand the value of this abbey was to make a simple, very simple game based on QR codes, based on the ghost of this place, because there is a lot of legendaries and legends about this place. But that was how having the objective was that whilst you were getting there after a long route, because it's not easy to get there, at least you could scout around, wander around, and meet all those QR codes that were revealing the history through this web app. And sorry, let's go back. And the majority of the puzzles were location-based, so you had to look at the place, and you had puzzles on your web app, and being able to connect the place with the story and the history of the place. The big aim that we learned from all our cases is related to scalability. Scaling your game, it's important, which means if something is born towards one axis, trying to get it to the other axis. That's why game format flexibility is something we care about, and it allows different engagement methods and different objectives, educational objectives, cultural objectives, and it helps different fruitions, which also means different type of audience. Cave Cave Deus Videt, the Bosch game, was a video game, but it was exhibited in many, like I cannot even count, many museums across the world. 20 months, 20 mesi, turned into an interactive theatrical piece, so that people could interact directly with a moderator that was an actor. CA1 turned into a tabletop, now it's on Steam, and it will be released on Switch next year. Our biggest case, and this is the final one, is Wer ist wer? Sorry, my German. Wer ist wer? Okay, better? Who is who? A game experience is exploring themes of walls, both physical and ideological, as well as conformity, non-conformity, and paranoia, inspired by the 13th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. What we were asked, the aim was that we wanted to, of course, revitalize the memory, but we wanted to give an experiential learning. And also there was a lot of community engagement, which means also working with the community to make the game, and cultural awareness. We had a location, which is Polo del Novecento in Turin. They gave us a room, and we turned the room into an escape room. This escape room had a video game inside, so that you could interact between what was going on in the video game and those big archives that you had to open. We use actors. I'm not sure if in this slide, no, you don't have the actors. We use actors, like the video game was actor-based, so they were like the position, so it was a very big production. So after that, we made the video, the escape room, we pushed it towards another game solution. During the pandemic, Triennale Milano, which is kind of our MoMA, asked us to move the experience into their theater. And so it became a theater performance that could be experienced via Zoom. So you were, there was an actress inside the real escape room. So we built the escape room inside the theater. And this actress was literally your hands on this. You were telling her, go here, go there, and she was interacting with you. Oh my gosh, let's do this. Oh, I don't know, you know, all those kind of performing things. And then as a final push, we turned the escape room into an interactive book, and which now is only in Italian. It's an interactive book that can be played at home. So also the inclusiveness of all those people that cannot physically go towards cultural heritage thing. So to wrap up, cultural heritage games needs unique approach focused on social impact with a clear purpose defined from its start. Each heritage should benefit from a tailored game format to enhance engagement. Fitting solution, I did this. Yes, scalability. Flexible format helps meet culture and educational goals effectively across different media. And that's it. Sorry. This was the most awkward.
No, it was perfect.
20 minutes?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I have a question for you. You don't mention that, but I know your opinion about that, so I want to hear from you. I want them to hear from you. A lot of people talk about gamification.
Yes.
And it's a common term, but it's often used not in a proper way, I think. And I know if you
at
agree.
least in Italy. I don't know in other countries.
What do you think about?
Okay.
About gamification?
Well, first of all, gamification is not a video game. So whatever is, when we think about gamification, we don't actually, it's a game mechanics applied to something that is not a video game. So Duolingo, it's a perfect example of gamification. I was talking to you yesterday that for me, the perfect game with the most amazing mechanics that can be perceived as a gamified, I don't know if it's English experience, it's Zombie Run. I don't know if you know it. It's an amazing running game. It's audio, you run, and then you have the zombies chasing you. So it's fun. I think that there is a lot, in general, even though there are conferences in Europe, there are academics, there is a lot of studies. There is not the final conference that provides the terminology about gamification, if gamification is good or bad, if it's a video game or not a video game. I think it's bad for culture. Maybe I'm strong about this. I don't think that anything that has a cultural purpose should be enhanced through a gamificated approach, because you're not actually making your audience ambassador of a content, but you are kind of feeding them, like, the Pavlov approach of the dog, like you say sit, you give a biscuit, and this is more or less how the approach with gamification is. But for those who think that gamification is a video game, then I guess it's a good approach. But in general, I don't think gamifications as a way of approaching to culture, it's a good approach. Do you still love me? Because, yeah, I'm very...
There's a heart for you from the public, so yes.
It's like, I don't know if in Spain you have those, we called in Italian televendite. Do you know what they are? Like you have X Factor, and then at some point there is a person that it's promoting, I don't know, a dishwasher powder, and that it's happened to be there. And they do it with a technique that reminds movies. So we don't say the movies are filmificated. So there is not a filmification, but we use gamification, which is also very horrible. It's a very horrible word. Like the word itself, like it sounds like a disease. I have gamification.
Thank you very much. So is there any, yes?
First of all, thank you for your presentation. I loved it. So I was wondering about budget, the way that factor plays in the type of game, because I'm imagining, so depending on the game, the budget is different, right? A video game probably is way more expensive than an analog game, for example. So I wonder, so if a client tells you, I want to do an analog game or an escape room, and you say, you need a video game, by the way, it's like 10 times more expensive. So or the other way around, sometimes they want to pay you more money, and it's like, no, wait, but you need...
Nobody wants to pay me more money. Most of the time is the other way around.
But okay, but if they tell you, we want you to create a video game, and
well, sometimes in the at least in Italy, but in the cultural institutions, say world, they are very confused. There is a lot of confusion. There is these things like, we need to make a video game, just like the ultimate solution to problems, like let's make a game. So now our museum that has every year 300 visitors is going to turn from 300 to 300 billions. And you're like, no, it doesn't work like this. First of all, if you want to make that kind of video game, you need a budget that starts from 150K more. And so we try to also be kind of psychologists of our clients and trying to understand that they should reduce their scope and make it very little. That's why we work a lot with scopes, and most of them are locals. I didn't mention, there was a slide about a game that it's called The Great Palermo, and this, which means Palermo, it's a city in Sicily, and it's filled with magic. And for this game, we moved there, and we try to work with the local community. So there is also a way of cutting down cost when you move, and you move as a director. You find expertise that are location-based. So you find musicians that are born in that place. You find local artists that have voice actors that have that particular accent. So you work with the people, which means that you are creating something like a 0 kilometer kind of approach to the game. But our budgets and our games are not like the AAA, not even the AA kind of budgets. They are small, very small budgets that are more related to a small exhibition or something like this. That's why our games are little. They are little experience that are meaningful for that particular scope. I hope I answered.
Yep, thank you.
Yes, thank you for your talk. It was a little bit of the same question, but not exactly. Same, but different. Sometimes when I work with clients, they come with a problem. So there are two possibilities. Either they absolutely don't know anything about any value, any scope, any rien du tout. Or they sometimes do have a very, very precise idea of what they want. And very often it's not the idea I would have gone with, which doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, but sometimes it's very bad. So my question is, how do you, work with them on how they project on your idea? And the second question is, why games? What is the appeal? What allows, what do games allow you to accomplish that you wouldn't be able to with other forms?
Well, for the first question, I would say that if a client that is ignorant, let me use this term, about what games are, I try to make metaphors that explains that you cannot go to a doctor and be the doctor. Because you're coming to me to solve a problem. If you come with the solution, then do the solution with some other partners. I need to be involved in the solution. You cannot just say, I thought about this, and can you do it for me? We do not work like this. And this arrives also with saying a lot of no's. We built in times a very strong identity, which is pretty different from conventional games. And this allowed us, it was hard, but this allowed us to say, if you're coming to us, it's because you want to trust us. You want us to follow you. It doesn't mean that we do not take the brief or we do not understand the meanings. There is a lot of conversations. But I come from traditional design, and one of the weirdest things that I don't promote is the common knowledge that everybody could be a designer. We could be designers. Of course, everybody could be a designer. But it's like saying everybody could be a politician, everybody could be a doctor. Everybody has his own jobs. And it's important that there is a trust, and that if you have ideas, it's nice to discuss them, but if this idea is just like nonsense and it will be pricey. And I had a client a few years ago who wanted to make an art game for he's a company that makes crayons. And they wanted to make games that could, by the drawing of the kids, could tell, like by framing the painting, could tell how the child improved in drawing. And I was like, AI was not there yet. And it's like, how can you tell in artistic terms that someone has improved? So if I frame Picasso, can I say that this is a good drawing? Like, that's very hard. So we had to move ideas around. I don't know if I answered.
Another question?
I can ask after.
I am huge fan, you so much. Really, really huge fan of your works and great thought.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So my question is, do you have a methodology to grab to catch the effectiveness of the design? Not just for the clients, but also to iterate the design in later works. I mean, how do you work this? How do you know how it works if your design works really? Do you have a way to?
Okay, everything that we do is tailored. It's tailor-made to the specific heritage. Some people asked us for a kind of, can we make a white box video game that can be, by changing the characters and the narrative, it could work for every kind of heritage that we're in? And the answer is, of course, no. It's like making the perfect movies where actors moves and they just pretend to talk and you put whatever you want them to say. This is not the right approach. But for every game that we make a social impact report that, of course, We Are Little is not one of those major reports, but we try to have indicators to understand what kind of social impact the game had. Like we made an escape room for an Italian writer called Gianni Rodari, and this game was for a library. This escape room was for a big important library in Italy, next to the hometown of this writer. And how we tried to understand what kind of social impact the game had, first thing we monitored was the amount of books that have been lended from the library about that writer. Because if you do the experience, then you might want to know more. And we monitored how many books were lended whilst the escape room was there. And that meant that every book that were rented by the library was a person should have bought in a bookstore. So we calculated how much amount of money people saved by going to the experience. And this is the kind of things that we do to understand the local impact, the social impact, and things like this. Like for Ghost and Found, we calculate, literally there is nothing around that abbey. It's a beautiful abbey, but there's nothing. Like you cycle for centuries and you arrive there, and sometimes there is a coffee shop that it's open, but you never know. It's by luck. So we try to calculate by the amount of people that get connected to the Wi-Fi of the abbey, because now there is a Wi-Fi. How many people were there? How long they lasted in the place? And if they lasted more than a certain hour, then it meant that they also went eating around a restaurant around there. So we tried to understand what is the economical impact that this type of games have on the territory. I don't know if I answered, but
yes,
indicators are very creative as well.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you.